The rain was relentless that autumn evening, drumming against the warped wooden porch of our childhood home in upstate New York. I stood there, my coat soaked through, staring at the faded green door I'd walked through 1,000 times as a girl. The house wasn't much 2 stories. Peeling paint, a sagging roof, but it was ours. Or it was supposed to be. My fingers tightened around the manila envelope in my hand, the weight of the legal documents inside grounding me against the storm of emotions threatening to pull me under. I'm Ellen, 52 years old, a high school history teacher with gray streaks in my hair and a heart too stubborn to quit. My sister, Clara, 2 years younger, had always been the opposite: wild, impulsive, a dreamer who never quite landed. Growing up, we'd been close, or so I thought. We'd shared secrets under the willow tree in the backyard, giggled over boys, and cried when our mother passed from cancer when I was 16. Our father followed a decade later, his heart giving out after years of hard labor at the mill. This house was all they'd left us, a modest inheritance meant to be split evenly. But Clara had other plans. It started 6 months ago, after I found the letter tucked in a drawer while cleaning out Dad's old desk. The deed to the house, the one our parents had proudly signed in 1972, was missing. I'd called Clara, assuming it was a misunderstanding. She'd always been careless, misplacing keys, forgetting bills. But her voice on the phone was sharp, evasive. "I don't know what you're talking about, Ellen," she'd said, too quickly. My stomach twisted. Clara had never been a good liar. I drove to her apartment in Albany the next day, a cramped 1-bedroom above a laundromat. She opened the door in a faded bathrobe, her auburn hair unwashed, her eyes darting like a cornered animal. "You can't just show up like this," she snapped, but I pushed past her. On her kitchen counter, amid takeout containers and unpaid bills, was a folder with the deed. My heart sank. She'd forged our parents' signatures, transferring the house to her name alone. "Why, Clara?" I asked, my voice breaking. She wouldn't meet my eyes. "I needed the money," she mumbled. "I was going to sell it." "Sell it?" "Our home. The place where Mom taught us to bake bread, where Dad carved our initials into the attic beams." She'd planned to erase it all for a quick buck. I left her apartment that day with the deed in my hand, my hands trembling with betrayal. Clara screamed after me, "You don't understand. You've always had it easy." Easy? I'd worked 2 jobs through college, cared for Dad in his final years, paid the property taxes on the house to keep it in the family. Clara had drifted, chasing get-rich-quick schemes, never holding a job for more than a year. And now this. I didn't sleep that night. The deed sat on my kitchen table, a silent accusation. I could let it go, let Clara have her way. She was my sister, after all. But something inside me snapped. This wasn't just about a house. It was about trust, about family, about the promises we'd made to our parents. I called a lawyer the next morning. His name was Mr. Hargrove, a wiry man with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. "This is fraud, Ellen," he said, examining the forged signatures. "We can take her to court, but it won't be easy. Family disputes like this, they get ugly." I nodded, my jaw tight. I didn't want ugly. I wanted justice. The first court date was set for a month later. I spent those weeks preparing, digging through old family records, gathering evidence of Clara's deceit. I found bank statements showing she'd already approached realtors, emails where she'd lied about owning the house outright. Each discovery was a knife in my chest, but I pressed on. I had to. Clara, meanwhile, played the victim. She called me daily, leaving voicemails that swung between tearful pleas and venomous accusations. "You're ruining my life, Ellen." One message screamed. "You're so selfish." I stopped answering. My students noticed my distraction. The way I'd pause mid-lecture, staring out the classroom window. "You okay, Ms. Harper?" they'd ask. I'd force a smile. "Just tired," I'd say. The night before the first hearing, I sat in the attic of the house, surrounded by boxes of Mom's old recipe cards and Dad's faded work gloves. I found a photo of Clara and me, maybe 10 and 12, grinning in matching overalls, our arms slung around each other. I traced her smile with my finger, wondering where that girl had gone. Tears stung my eyes, but I wiped them away. This wasn't about sentiment. It was about doing what was right. The courtroom was cold, sterile, nothing like the warm chaos of our childhood. Clara sat across from me, her face pale, her hands twisting in her lap. She'd hired a lawyer, a slick man in a cheap suit who argued she'd acted out of desperation, not malice. My client was in financial distress, he said. She believed she had a right to the property. I wanted to scream. A right. She'd stolen it. Mr. Hargrove presented our case with calm precision, laying out the forged documents, the realtor's emails, the timeline of Clara's lies. The judge, an older woman with sharp eyes, listened intently. I testified, my voice steady despite the ache in my chest. "This house is all I have left of my parents," I said. Clara knew that. She took it anyway. When Clara took the stand, she cried, her mascara streaking. "I didn't mean to hurt anyone," she sobbed. "I just needed a way out." Part of me wanted to believe her, to see the sister I'd once loved. But the evidence was undeniable. The judge adjourned for the day, promising a ruling soon. That night, I dreamed of Mom, her gentle voice telling me to forgive. I woke up crying, the weight of the fight pressing down on me. Could I forgive Clara? Should I? The house wasn't just bricks and mortar, it was memory, legacy, love. But so was family. I didn't know how to reconcile the two. The weeks after the first hearing blurred into a haze of anxiety and routine. I threw myself into teaching, grading papers late into the night, trying to drown out the gnawing uncertainty. The judge's ruling was still pending, and every day felt like waiting for a storm to break. Clara's voicemail stopped, replaced by an eerie silence that was somehow worse. I wondered what she was planning, if she was planning anything at all. One afternoon, while sorting through old lesson plans, I got a call from Mr. Hargrove. "Ellen, we've got a problem," he said, his voice tight. Clara's lawyer had filed a counterclaim, accusing me of coercing her into signing over the deed years ago, before the forgery. It was a lie, a desperate attempt to muddy the waters. But it meant more court dates, more legal fees, more time torn between anger and guilt. I drove to the house that weekend, needing to feel grounded. The backyard willow tree was bare, its branches swaying in the October wind. I sat beneath it, remembering how Clara and I used to pretend it was a castle, its leaves our royal canopy. Back then, she'd been my partner in every adventure. Now, she was my adversary. I started noticing small things missing from the Housia porcelain teacup from Mom's collection. A brass lamp Dad had loved. Had Clara been here? I called Mr. Hargrove, who advised me to change the locks. "She's escalating," he warned. "Be careful." I did as he suggested, but the violation lingered. This was our home, yet it felt like a battleground. The second court date arrived in early November, the air crisp with the promise of winter. Clara looked thinner, her eyes hollow. Her lawyer's argument leaned heavily on her sob story, a struggling single woman, drowning in debt, driven to desperation. I wanted to sympathize, but the truth was sharper. Clara had chosen this path. She'd had chances, jobs, loans, my own offers to help, but she'd burned every bridge. Mr. Hargrove cross-examined her, exposing inconsistencies in her story. So, Ms. Harper, you claim you believe the house was yours alone. Yet you never contacted your sister to discuss it. Clara stammered, her composure cracking. I watched, my heart a tangle of pity and resolve. She wasn't the villain I wanted her to be, but she wasn't innocent either. After the hearing, I found her outside the courthouse, smoking a cigarette with shaking hands. Ellen, she said, her voice hoarse. Can we talk? Against my better judgment, I nodded. We sat on a bench, the cold seeping through my coat. She told me about her debts, credit cards, a failed business venture, a loan shark breathing down her neck. I didn't know what else to do, she said, tears spilling. The house was my only way out. You could have asked me, I said quietly. We could have figured it out together. She shook her head. You'd never understand. You've always been perfect. Perfect. I wanted to laugh. I'd sacrificed dreams, relationships, years of my life to keep our family together. But Clara only saw her own pain. I left her on that bench, her words echoing in my mind. Part of me wanted to drop the case, to let her have the house if it meant peace. But I couldn't. Not because of greed, but because giving in would mean letting her erase our parents' legacy. They'd worked too hard, loved us too much, for it to end like this. Back home, I found an old journal of Mom's in the attic, tucked inside a box of Christmas ornaments. Her handwriting was faded but familiar, full of hope and worry for us. Ellen is so strong, she'd written. Clara is so bright. I pray they'll always have each other. I closed the journal, my throat tight. Mom would have hated this fight, but she'd have wanted us to do what was right. The third court date loomed, and Mr. Hargrove warned me Clara's lawyer was pushing for mediation. They know they're losing, he said. They want to settle. I wasn't sure what I wanted, any more justice, closure, or just an end to the pain. I agreed to mediation, hoping it might salvage something between us. The mediator was a calm woman named Ms. Ellison, who listened as we laid out our sides. Clara begged for forgiveness, promising to repay me if I dropped the case. I wanted to believe her, but her promises felt like echoes of all the times she'd let me down. I offered a compromise. We'd sell the house and split the proceeds evenly, as our parents intended. She refused, insisting she needed it all. Mediation failed, and the case went back to court. The judge's ruling came a week later, just before Thanksgiving. I was at school, grading essays, when Mr. Hargrove called. Ellen, we won, he said. The deed is yours. Clara's claim was dismissed. Relief flooded me, but it was bittersweet. I'd won the house, but at what cost? That night, I drove to the house, the deed officially in my name. The victory felt hollow. Clara was nowhere to be found, no calls, no messages. I learned later she'd been evicted from her apartment, unable to pay rent. Guilt gnawed at me. Had I pushed too hard? Could I have saved her? Winter settled over upstate New York, blanketing the house in snow. I moved back in, hoping to reclaim the warmth of our childhood. But the rooms felt empty, haunted by memories and choices. The legal battle was over, but the war inside me raged on. Clara was out there somewhere, and the silence between us was louder than any argument. I started fixing up the house. Small tasks to keep my hands busy and my mind quiet. I painted the kitchen a soft yellow, like Mom used to love, and replaced the leaky faucet in the bathroom. Each repair felt like stitching a wound, but it couldn't heal the rift with Clara. I kept expecting her to show up, to bang on the door and demand anything, but she didn't. One evening, a neighbor, Mrs. Callahan, stopped by with a casserole and a worried look. I saw Clara at the shelter downtown. She said gently, "She's not doing well, Ellen." My heart lurched. A shelter. Clara, with her bright laugh and reckless dreams, living among strangers. I thanked Mrs. Callahan and closed the door, my mind racing. I drove to the shelter the next day, a squat brick building on the edge of town. The air inside smelled of bleach and despair. I found Clara in a corner, curled up on a cot, her face gaunt. She looked up, and for a moment, I saw the girl from the willow tree. Then her eyes hardened. "What do you want?" she asked. "I want to help," I said, sitting beside her. She laughed, a bitter sound. "You got what you wanted. The house. Why are you here?" I didn't have a good answer. I'd won, but it didn't feel like victory. I offered to pay for a motel, to get her back on her feet, but she shook her head. "I don't need your pity," she said. I left the shelter feeling heavier than when I'd arrived. Clara's pride was her prison, but I couldn't force her to accept help. I went back to the house and found myself wandering the attic again, sifting through old letters and photos. I found a note from Clara, written when she was 14, promising to always have my back. I cried until my chest ached. Christmas came, and I spent it alone. The house too quiet. I put up a small tree, hung Mom's old ornaments, and tried to feel festive. But the weight of Clara's absence was crushing. I called Mr. Hargrove, asking if there was a way to share the house without losing it. He sighed. "Legally, it's tricky. She could contest it again." "Are you sure?" I wasn't. But I couldn't shake the image of Clara in that shelter. In January, I hired a private investigator to keep tabs on her, worried she'd disappear completely. He reported she'd moved to a cheap motel, working odd jobs at a diner. I sent her a letter, offering to meet, to talk, to find a way forward. She didn't respond. I kept writing anyway, pouring out my guilt, my anger, my love. I don't know if she read them. By spring, the house was looking better. New roof, fresh paint, flowers in the garden. I invited my students over for a history project, letting them explore the attic's treasures. Their laughter filled the rooms, and for the first time, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe I could make this place a home again, not just for me, but for others. I started volunteering at the shelter, not to find Clara, but to understand her world. One day, while serving soup, I saw her. She was at the back of the line, head down, her coat too thin for the chilly March air. I didn't approach her, just watched as she took her tray and sat alone. She looked up once, our eyes meeting for a split second before she turned away. It was enough. She was still here, still fighting, in her own way. I went home that night and made a decision. I'd sell the house. Not because I wanted to, but because it was the only way to move forward. The money would be split half for me, half for Clara. No strings attached. I called Mr. Hargrove to start the process, my hands steady for the first time in months. Selling the house wasn't as simple as I'd hoped. The realtor, a cheerful woman named Linda, warned me the market was slow, and the house's age meant costly repairs for any buyer. I didn't care about the money. Not really. I just wanted closure. A way to untangle Clara and me from this knot of pain. I told Linda to list it. And she did, with a sign staked in the front yard that felt like a betrayal of Mom and Dad. Clara finally called me a week later, her voice low and tired. "You're selling it?" she asked. No anger, just disbelief. I explained my plan: split the proceeds. Give her a fresh start. She was quiet for so long I thought she'd hung up. "Why are you doing this?" she finally said. I didn't know how to answer. "Because I love you. Because I hate what we've become. It's what's fair," I said instead. We met at a coffee shop to talk. Neutral ground. She looked better than at the shelter. Her hair clean. Her eyes clearer. She was working full-time at the diner now, saving for an apartment. "I messed up, Ellen," she said, stirring her coffee. "I know that." It was the closest she'd come to an apology. I wanted to hug her, to scream at her, to cry. Instead, I nodded. We both did. The house sold in April to a young couple with a baby on the way. They loved the willow tree, the attic's quirks, the history etched into every creaky floorboard. Watching them sign the papers felt like letting go of a piece of my soul. But it also felt right. The sale netted $220. 000. More than I'd expected. I wired Clara her half. No questions asked. She used the money to rent a small apartment and enroll in a community college program for bookkeeping. I was proud of her, though I didn't say it. Our conversations were tentative, like stepping on thin ice. We met for coffee again, then lunch, then a walk in the park. Each time, we talked a little more, remembered a little more, laughed a little more. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet, but it was a start. I rented a cottage a few towns over, closer to school. It was small, cozy, with a garden I could tend. I hung Mom's recipe cards on the kitchen wall, Dad's work gloves on a shelf. The house was gone, but their love wasn't. I started writing again. Not letters to Clara, but a memoir of sorts, piecing together our story. It helped me make sense of the pain, the choices, the hope. Clara invited me to her apartment one evening. A modest place with thrift store furniture and a potted plant she'd named Gertrude. We cooked dinner together, a recipe from Mom's cards. And for a moment, it felt like old times. "I'm sorry, Ellen," she said as we washed dishes. "For everything." I looked at her, really looked, and saw the sister I'd missed. "Me too," I said. We didn't talk about the house or the court case after that. It was behind us, a scar we'd both carry but wouldn't let define us. I kept volunteering at the shelter, teaching night classes for adults trying to start over. Clara sometimes joined me, her bookkeeping skills helping with the shelter's budget. We were rebuilding, not just ourselves, but something like family. Summer brought warmth and longer days. And with them, a fragile peace between Clara and me. We weren't the girls under the willow tree anymore, but we were learning to be sisters again. I'd visit her apartment, and she'd come to my cottage. Each of us tiptoeing around the past, but eager for the future. She was good at bookkeeping, her teachers said, and she talked about opening her own business someday. I believed in her, maybe for the first time in years. I kept teaching, my classroom a refuge where I could pour my energy into shaping young minds. My students loved the stories I told about the house, the willow tree, the parents who'd loved us fiercely. I didn't mention Clara's betrayal or the court case, but I shared the lessons about love, loss, and the courage to do what's right, even when it hurts. One afternoon, Clara called with news. She'd been offered a job at an accounting firm, a real step up from the diner. "I want you to come to my graduation," she said, her voice shy. I smiled, tears pricking my eyes. I wouldn't miss it. Her graduation was in August, a small ceremony at the community college. I sat in the audience, watching her walk across the stage in her cap and gown, her smile brighter than I'd seen in years. Afterward, we went to dinner, just the two of us, and talked about everything but the past. She told me about her job, her plans, her dreams. I told her about my memoir, my students, my garden. It felt like a new beginning. But healing isn't linear. There were days when I'd drive past the old house, now painted blue by the new owners, and feel a pang of loss. I'd wonder if I'd done the right thing, if I could have saved the house and Clara both. She had her own struggles, moments when her old impulsiveness crept back. But she was trying. We both were. By fall, I'd finished a draft of my memoir, titled The House We Kept. I sent it to Clara, nervous about her reaction. She called me a week later, her voice thick with emotion. "You didn't make me the bad guy," she said. "Why not?" I paused, searching for the words. "Because you're not. You're my sister." We spent Thanksgiving together at my cottage, cooking Mom's recipes, laughing over Dad's terrible jokes we still remembered. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. The house was gone, but we'd found something else, a bond forged through pain, rebuilt with care. As winter approached, Clara and I settled into a rhythm. We weren't just sisters. We were friends again, cautious but real. She thrived at her new job, her confidence growing with every spreadsheet she balanced. I published my memoir through a small press, and to my surprise, it found a quiet audience, people who saw their own family struggles in ours. One snowy evening, Clara came to my cottage with a gift, a framed photo of us as kids, standing under the willow tree. "I found it in a box," she said, her eyes soft. "I thought we should have it." We hung it above the fireplace, a reminder of where we'd started and how far we'd come. The shelter became our shared project. We volunteered together, Clara teaching budgeting workshops, me leading storytelling sessions. We met people like us, broken, hopeful, trying. It felt like honoring Mom and Dad, whose love had always been about giving, even when it hurt. One night, as we sorted donations, Clara turned to me. "Do you ever miss the house?" she asked. I nodded. "Every day? But I don't miss the fight." She reached for my hand, and I squeezed hers back. We didn't need the house to be family. My memoir's success led to speaking engagements at local libraries, where I shared our story not as a tale of betrayal, but of redemption. Clara came to one, sitting in the back, her smile proud. Afterward, she hugged me, whispering, "You're stronger than I'll ever be." I shook my head. We're strong together. By spring, Clara had saved enough to buy a small condo. I helped her move in, painting walls and planting flowers. She hung the same photo above her fireplace, a mirror of mine. We were separate now, with our own lives, but connected in a way we hadn't been before. The last time I drove past the old house, I didn't stop. I didn't need to. The memories lived in me, in Clara, in the stories we'd tell. We'd lost the house, but we'd found each other. And that, I realized, was the legacy Mom and Dad would have wanted most.